Alien girl saw the human stand alone against the storm. Later, she returned his bravery in kind. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The storm had a sound, low, metallic, like a sheet of steel being bent by invisible hands. Ethan Cole felt it vibrate through the ground beneath his boots as he tightened the straps on the relay tower stabilizer. The wind rushed past him in hammering bursts, carrying flakes of ice that stung the skin like tiny sparks. He leaned his weight against the tower's frame, breath sharp, cold scraping down his throat. The horizon had disappeared hours ago. Only the storm remained, a swirling white wall pressing in from all sides. His visor read -23 degrees Fahrenheit, dropping fast. He kept going. No one told him to stay out here. No one would have blamed him for turning back. But communications for the entire Valley outpost depended on this tower standing through the night, and he knew what happened when storms like this cut people off. He had seen it once. He didn't want to see it again. A gust hit hard enough to jolt him sideways. His gloved hand shot out, gripping the metal beam. The tower groaned under the strain, a long, tired sound. "Hold on," he muttered, voice muffled behind his mask. Just a little longer. Somewhere beyond the rolling snow, something moved. A soft glow, faint at first, then steady, like moonlight through fog. Ethan exhaled once, slow. He knew that glow. He had seen it weeks ago when he first arrived on Caro's 7. Alien patrols crossing the ridge, their skin giving off a bioluminescent shimmer that looked almost unreal. The figure stood still, half hidden by the storm. He couldn't see details, only the outline. Tall, slender, calm in a way no human could be in this wind. Watching him, he turned back to the stabilizer, pushing the final latch into place. Ice crusted along the joints. His fingers throbbed from the cold even through insulated gloves. Another gust, stronger than before, slammed against the tower. It shook hard enough to rattle his teeth. He braced himself, boots digging into the frozen ground. For a moment, the storm drowned out everything, even his own heartbeat. And still he stayed, one man against a planet's wrath. When the wind eased, he risked a glance toward the ridge. The glowing figure was gone. Only swirling white remained. For a second, he wondered if he imagined her. The cold made people see things. But Ethan knew what he saw. Someone had been watching. Someone not human. He tightened the final bolt. The relay lights flickered, then steadied to a pale blue signal. Operational. Against the storm's roar, a quiet sense of relief moved through him. He straightened, shoulders aching. Snow collected on his jacket, melting into thin streams of cold down his collar. He looked once more into the empty haze, unsure why he expected the figure to return. The wind answered him with another steel-like groan. Ethan pulled his hood up and began the slow, heavy walk back toward the outpost lights, unaware that the alien girl who had watched him stand alone against the storm had already made her decision. She would come back, and when she did, she would carry his bravery like a weight in her chest, determined to return it in kind. Ethan reached the edge of the outpost with the storm still pushing at his back like a heavy hand. The lights along the perimeter flickered through the moving snow, soft and warm compared to the harsh white outside. He paused at the airlock, letting his breath settle, watching it trail upward in thin pale strands. His jacket was stiff with ice. The numbness in his fingers had crept up his forearms. He pressed the panel and stepped inside, feeling the sudden shift in temperature wrap around him like a blanket. The airlock hummed, cycling. When the inner door slid open, the quiet felt almost loud after the storm's constant roar. Ethan peeled off his gloves and flexed his hands. Red marks showed where the cold had bitten through. He rubbed them gently, exhaling as feeling returned in small sparks of discomfort. The outpost common room was dim, lit by a few overhead strips and the soft glow of instrument panels. A coffee pot sat warm on the counter. He poured a cup, the steam rising in a reassuring curl. He held it between both hands, absorbing the heat. Outside, the storm continued to batter the walls with a steady drumming sound. He had grown used to it, But tonight it felt heavier somehow, as if carrying more than wind and snow. He sat near the small observation window, its glass frosted at the corners. Beyond the outpost lights lay the open valley, now swallowed in white. He watched the swirling shapes move across the darkness. His mind kept circling back to the figure on the ridge. The calm stance, the glow, the way she had disappeared without a trace. He had seen alien patrols before, but this had felt different, more deliberate, more focused on him. He sipped the coffee slowly, letting the warmth calm his thoughts. The relay tower would hold through the night. That was what mattered. People in the shelters depended on that signal for navigation, weather readings, and communication. If the tower failed, they would be cut off entirely until the storm passed. He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. The fatigue hit as soon as he stopped moving. Not the sharp kind, but the deep, spreading tiredness that came after pushing himself too far. He told himself he would rest for a few minutes. Just a few. A soft chime sounded. Sensor alert. Ethan opened his eyes and looked toward the console. One of the perimeter monitors showed a flicker of movement, a heat signature just beyond the outer lights. It did not match human readings. He stood slowly, careful not to spill the cup. The storm made readings jumpy, but this one held steady. Tall, graceful, moving with a purpose that did not belong to the wind. He walked to the console and adjusted the view. The figure stepped closer into the range of the cameras. A faint glow outlined her shape, shimmering through the falling snow. Ethan felt his breath catch, not in fear, but in something closer to recognition. It was her, the alien he had seen watching him from the ridge. She moved as if the storm meant nothing, the snow swirling off her shoulders as though it refused to cling. He set down the cup and stepped closer to the window. The glow brightened, steady and soft, like the reflection of distant stars. She stopped at the edge of the perimeter lights, just beyond the first marker pole. She did not try to come closer. She simply stood there, watching the outpost with the same quiet focus she had turned toward him earlier. Ethan's pulse slowed, then steadied. Somehow he knew she had come for a reason. She had seen him stand alone against the storm. And now, something in her presence suggested she was waiting for the moment to return that gesture in her own way. Ethan stayed by the window, hands resting lightly on the cold metal frame as the faint glow outside pulsed through the falling snow. The storm had begun to settle into a slower rhythm, the wind no longer screaming but humming in long, low breaths against the outpost walls. The perimeter lights flickered once, then steadied, illuminating the figure standing just beyond their reach. She remained perfectly still, as if waiting for him to decide what happened next. Ethan felt an old instinct tug at him, the same one that had made him walk through blinding white earlier that day. He grabbed his coat, sliding his arms into the stiff sleeves, the fabric crackling with bits of frost that had not fully thawed. He pulled the hood up, tightened the straps, and stepped toward the airlock. A soft beep confirmed the outer door cycle. Cold air rushed in the moment the lock opened, brushing his face with sharp fingers. He stepped outside and let the door close behind him, leaving only the muted lights at his back. The snow crunched beneath his boots in slow, deliberate sounds. Each step seemed to echo in the open space. The alien girl turned slightly as he approached, her glow brightening just enough to outline her features. Her skin had a soft blue tone that shimmered under the storm light, and her eyes carried a quiet silver reflection that made it hard to look away. She did not speak. Instead, she watched him with a steady gaze, as if studying the way he moved, the way he opened his hands to show he meant no harm. Ethan stopped a respectful distance away, the snow falling gently between them. The storm had softened around her, almost like it avoided her presence. He noticed the thin layer of frost forming on her hair, catching tiny reflections from the perimeter lights. "You were there earlier," he said, keeping his voice calm and warm. "On the ridge. Watching." She tilted her head, a small motion, graceful and curious. For a moment he wondered if she understood him. Then her voice reached him, soft and even, carrying a resonance that felt older than the wind around them. "You stood in the storm when it tried to take the tower," she said. Her words had a careful shape, as though she had learned his language but still felt its edges. No others did. Ethan let the words settle between them. He glanced at the tower in the distance, its signal light blinking through the thinning snow. "It had to be done," he replied. "People need that connection. They depend on it." Her eyes followed the direction he looked, pausing on the blinking light, as if evaluating the meaning behind it. "You endure much," she said. "Your kind pushes against danger. It is not the way of my people." He offered a small, tired smile. "Sometimes we push because nobody else will." The wind picked up gently, carrying a swirl of snow around her feet. She stepped closer, still keeping a respectful space between them. Up close, the glow from her skin was softer, almost like the warmth of a lantern held a few inches away. "My name is Lyriash," she said. Ethan nodded once. "Ethan." She repeated his name quietly, testing it, and the way it sounded in her voice made it feel strange and new. Lyriash glanced toward the valley, then back at him. "The storm grows again," she said. "You should not face it alone." He felt a small spark of something steady rise in his chest, something that was not fear and not relief, but a recognition of the moment unfolding. The snow drifted around them like slow-moving stars. For the first time since arriving on Caro's 7, he felt the storm lose a little of its weight. Lyriash took another step, her glow brightening slightly. She lifted her hand, palm open, not touching him but offering the smallest gesture of trust. Ethan drew a breath, warm in the cold air, and understood she had not come to watch this time. She had come to stand with him. The wind shifted as Lyriash stood beside Ethan, her glow softening the edges of the storm until it felt less like a force meant to break him and more like a living thing catching its breath. The valley stretched behind her in muted shadows, the snow drifting in slow spirals around her feet, as if the storm itself hesitated to touch her. Ethan watched her for a quiet moment, noticing how her presence changed the rhythm of the cold. It did not push as hard. It did not bite as deeply. She lowered her hand slowly, not withdrawing trust, but giving him space to choose the next step. Ethan exhaled, letting the cold roll out of his chest. "Come inside," he said gently. "It is warmer there. Safer." Lyriash looked toward the outpost, its lights flickering through the fog like small beacons. She hesitated. Not out of fear, he realized, but out of uncertainty about the human space behind those metal walls. "Your shelter," she murmured. "It is not meant for my kind." "Maybe not," Ethan replied, "but the storm does not care. And neither do I." Something in his voice made her eyes soften. She followed him toward the airlock with steps light enough that she barely disturbed the snow. When the door sealed behind them, the sudden hush pressed close around them. Warm air cycled through the chamber, melting ice crystals from Ethan's coat and lifting strands of Lyriash's hair with a faint current of heat. She touched the metal wall lightly, her fingers tracing the surface as if reading it. Her skin left a faint shimmer on the cold steel, like starlight brushing against shadow. When the inner door opened, the quiet glow of the common room washed over them. Screens blinked with steady readings. A soft hum moved through the air vents. The storm's voice remained outside, muted to a distant whisper. Ethan watched Lyriash take in the space with the slow attention of someone cataloging every sound and scent. "You live in metal," she said softly. "And in storms." "I guess we do," he answered. "Both have their purpose." She stepped farther inside, pausing near the observation window. The frost on the glass caught her glow and reflected it in delicate patterns. He noticed how she leaned slightly forward, watching the snow fall in drifting sheets. Her shoulders lowered, just a little, as if the warmth eased something she carried. Ethan made his way to the counter and poured a fresh cup of coffee. The aroma filled the room with its earthy warmth. Lyriash turned her head slightly. "The smell," she said. "It is comforting." Ethan smiled. "Want to try some?" She considered the cup, then shook her head softly. "Your drinks are not made for me, but the warmth is kind." He nodded, respecting the boundary. He wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the heat settle into his palms. Lyriash moved closer to the table, her steps silent. She studied the scattered tools and data pads as if each one told a fragment of a story. When her gaze finally returned to him, it carried a quiet question. "When the storm was strongest," she said, "why did you stay?" Ethan looked at the relay beacon blinking outside, its blue light steady in the snow. "Because if the tower fell, people would be cut off. And if someone needed help, no one would hear them." She absorbed his words with a stillness that felt deeper than silence. "Your kind protects one another," she said, "even against the world itself." "We try," Ethan replied. Lyriash lifted her gaze to the window again. The storm was gathering strength beyond the lights. Then tonight, she whispered, I will try as well. Her glow brightened, faint but certain, casting a soft light across the room. Ethan felt the air shift with something unspoken, something like understanding settling between them. For the first time since arriving on this frozen planet, he did not feel alone. Ethan stood near the small heater panel as its quiet hum filled the room with a steady warmth. The storm outside pressed gently against the metal walls, no longer the furious thing it had been earlier, but a slow, heavy breathing that moved through the valley. Lyrish stood at the observation window, her glow casting thin ribbons of light across the frosted glass. For a long moment neither of them spoke. It was not silence born from discomfort, but from the kind of calm that arrived only after danger had passed. Ethan watched her fingertips hover above the window pane without touching it, as if she sensed something beyond the glass that he could not. The wind flickered against the outpost lights. She tilted her head slightly. The storm shifts, she said quietly. It carries a warning. Ethan walked closer, coffee cup warming his hands. You can read storms? She nodded once. My people grow up listening to the wind. It speaks through patterns, pressure, rhythm. She looked at him with a soft, steady gaze. It told me you would not leave the tower. Ethan let out a thin breath. Does it say what happens next? Her eyes moved back to the valley. It says the night is not finished testing us. He felt a small chill slip down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Still, her presence made the air feel less oppressive, as if her glow softened even the fear that tried to creep in. Lyrish stepped away from the window, her movement gentle and slow. She approached the heater and held her hands near it, palms open. The warmth made her faint bioluminescence brighten just a little. Ethan watched her study the orange coils inside the panel like she was trying to understand how humans had trapped warmth inside metal. She looked over her shoulder. This place is strange, she said, but in a way that feels kind. Ethan smiled. It is just an outpost. Most people would call it small and uncomfortable. Small, she replied, but chosen. Her gaze moved across the room, landing on the tools, the blankets, the kettle, the half-finished wiring project he had left on the table earlier. All these things exist because you made them. She paused. The storm cannot take that from you. Ethan leaned back against the counter. Where do you stay during storms? Her expression softened, though he sensed a shadow of something deeper beneath it. My people shelter in the ridge caverns. But I did not return there tonight. She met his eyes, steady and without hesitation. I saw you walk into the wind alone. And something in me refused to turn away. A warmth that had nothing to do with the heater spread quietly through Ethan's chest. He set the cup down to keep his hand still. Lyrish stepped a little closer, the glow from her skin brushing faint light across his jacket. Your world teaches you to stand, she said. Mine teaches us to bend. She studied him with a soft, curious pause. But maybe strength is found in both. Another gust swept against the outpost wall, louder this time. Lyrish's eyes shifted toward the sound. The warning grows, she whispered. The storm is changing shape. Ethan straightened slightly. You think something is happening out there? Yes, she answered. And soon. Her glow brightened, not with fear, but with a quiet readiness. If the night will test us, she said gently, then we must face it together. Ethan felt the truth of her words settle into the space between them like a second heartbeat. Outside, the storm gathered itself once more, preparing its next breath. The storm's rhythm deepened, the wind outside shifting into a low, pulsing sound that vibrated through the metal floor beneath their feet. Ethan felt it in his ribs, a gentle but unmistakable pressure, as if the night itself had moved closer to the outpost walls. Lyrish turned toward the observation window again, her glow brightening just enough to cast a soft halo across the frosted glass. Her breath made no cloud in the warm air, but something in her posture said she was listening with more than her ears. Ethan approached slowly. You hear something? She nodded, her silver eyes narrowing in concentration. The storm carries a pattern that does not belong to it. A shape that feels unfamiliar. Ethan glanced at the monitors. Readings wavered for a moment, then steadied. Could it be interference from another ridge? No, she said softly. This is closer. She stepped forward and pressed her palm lightly near the window, though she did not touch it. The glow beneath her skin flickered as she focused. It is the sound of something moving against the wind, not with it. Ethan felt a faint tension coil at the base of his neck. Something alive? Lyriash tilted her head. Alive, yes, but not like my people. She looked back at him, the air around her shimmering faintly. And not like yours. Ethan set his hand against the metal frame of the window for balance. Outside, the storm swirled in slow, deliberate currents. Snow drifted sideways, carried by a wind that moved with more intention than before. He watched for any flicker of movement, any hint of a shape. Nothing appeared, only the pale blue pulse of the relay tower in the distance. Lyriash stepped away from the window and moved toward his work table. Her eyes scanned the scattered equipment, landing on a handheld scanner he had calibrated earlier for atmospheric readings. She lifted it gently and held it out to him. Your tools can see what my senses cannot. Ethan powered it on. The screen lit with soft green values that danced across the display. He angled the device toward the window, sweeping slowly. For several long seconds, nothing shifted. Then a faint spike appeared, small but steady. A temperature anomaly. A moving anomaly. Ethan tightened his grip. There is something warm out there, he said quietly. But it is too warm for wildlife. And too steady for drifting debris. Lyriash took a slow breath. Then the storm hides more than wind. Her glow deepened slightly, the color shifting from soft silver blue to a calmer, stronger hue. Your people do not walk the valley at night, she said. Mine do not leave the ridges. Whatever moves out there does not travel by choice. Ethan lowered the scanner. What do you think it wants? She shook her head lightly. Storms reveal. They do not explain. Another pulse of wind pressed against the outpost, making the heater's flame flicker in its glass casing. Ethan felt the room grow still around them, the kind of stillness that came before a decision had to be made. Lyriash stood in the center of the room, her presence calm and steady, her glow painting soft light across the consoles. If the storm brings a warning, she said, then we must understand it before it reaches your tower. Ethan looked at the scanner again, then out at the swirling valley. He sensed the truth in her words. He felt it in the floor, in the air, in the strange pressure of the wind. Lyriash stepped closer, her voice lowering to a gentle certainty. Your world teaches you to face danger, she said. Mine teaches us to read it. But tonight, she lifted her eyes to meet his. Tonight we must do both. Outside, the wind shifted once more, carrying with it a distant, unfamiliar sound that neither of them could name. The unfamiliar sound threaded through the storm again, a low, wavering note that vibrated gently along the metal walls, like something feeling its way through the valley. Ethan stared at the monitors as the scanner in his hand flickered with small jumps of static, each one sharper than the last. Lyriash moved closer to the window, her glow shifting into a softer, more focused hue, as if her body tuned itself to the changes in the air. She did not speak at first. She was listening, truly listening, the way someone might listen for a heartbeat in the dark. Ethan stepped beside her. The window glass felt cold even from inches away. Snow drifted across the outside lights in slow curtains of white. It is closer, Lyriash whispered. Ethan swallowed, his breath warm but unsteady in the quiet. The anomaly? She nodded once. The storm tries to pull it, but it does not follow the wind. It pushes forward. Ethan watched the lights, searching for movement. For a moment, he saw nothing. Only the soft sway of the atmosphere. Then the relay tower flickered. The pale blue light dimmed, then steadied. Ethan felt a tightness form behind his ribs. If the signal drops, he said, the shelters will lose their connection. Lyriash turned toward him. Then we cannot remain inside. Ethan hesitated. The cold outside was still dangerous. The storm's pressure was rising again. And whatever moved through that darkness was not something either of them understood. But he saw the calm certainty in Lyriash's eyes, the steady glow under her skin that made the room feel less fragile. She had walked into the wind for him. She had listened to the storm for him. He nodded. All right, he said quietly. We go together. They suited up in the airlock, Ethan pulling on his outer jacket while Lyriash adjusted the thermal wrap he offered. She handled it carefully, her fingers tracing the fabric like she was memorizing its texture. Human things hold warmth, she murmured. Not because they are strong, but because someone decided they should. Ethan smiled gently. Most of our inventions come from wanting each other to survive. She looked up at him then, a soft glow reflecting off the curved metal walls. A beautiful reason, she said. The airlock cycled open. Cold swept in immediately, brushing over Ethan's face with the thin bite of approaching danger. Snow swirled in delicate spirals around Lyriash, catching the light of her glow and scattering it like small drifting stars. They stepped out together. The ground felt different beneath Ethan's boots, not unstable but responsive, as if the storm had weight now rather than emptiness. Lyriash paused, her eyes tracking the wind. There, she whispered, pointing toward the deeper part of the valley. Ethan followed her gesture. A faint pulse of light moved far beyond the relay tower, almost hidden by the storm's thick breath. It was not the tower. It was not lightning. It moved with purpose, slow but steady. It calls the wind toward it, Lyriash said softly. And the wind answers. Ethan tightened his straps, the cold pinching at the corners of his eyes. If that thing keeps moving toward the tower, we need to get ahead of it. Keep the signal steady. Lyriash looked at him, her expression calm and resolute. Then we stand where the wind gathers. A stronger gust pushed across the valley, carrying with it a deep, distant hum. Not threatening, not hostile, but powerful. Ethan exhaled. This is the test. Lyriash reached out her hand, stopping just short of touching his sleeve, offering strength without forcing it. And we will face it side by side. The storm shifted again, the white veil lifting just enough to reveal the faint glow ahead. Together, they began walking toward it. The snow thickened around Ethan and Lyriash as they crossed the open valley, the storm folding in and out like a giant breath. Each gust carried tiny crystals that shimmered briefly against Lyriash's glow before dissolving into the dark. The strange light in the distance pulsed again, steady and slow, as if announcing its presence with each wave. Ethan steadied the scanner in his hand. The readings wavered, then climbed in small, consistent steps. It is moving toward the tower, he said quietly. Lyriash nodded, her eyes reflecting the pale glow ahead. The wind follows its rhythm. It is not a creature of the valley. It is something that listens to pressure and responds to it. Ethan frowned. Responds how? She walked a few paces forward, the snow shifting carefully around her steps. Storms are a language. My people learned to read them as children. This thing, it is repeating the same pattern back to the storm, but without meaning. Ethan did not fully understand, but he heard the strain in her voice, not from fear, but from the burden of interpreting something unfamiliar. The relay tower flickered again, a faint dim of blue before regaining its strength. Ethan's breath fogged briefly before tearing away in the cold air. If that thing disrupts the tower, the shelters lose everything. Lyriash turned to him, her expression calm. Then the tower must not fall. The wind shifted sharply, blowing a thin veil of snow aside, revealing more of the glow. It was closer now, illuminating the storm from within. Ethan felt the air hum in his chest, a soft vibration that followed the rhythm of the light. Lyriash stepped slightly in front of him, her glow rising like a shield. It hears us, she whispered. Ethan blinked. Hears, not through ears, through motion, through rhythm. She lifted her hand, letting the wind roll across her fingers. The glow under her skin followed the movement, adjusting in faint pulses. Ethan watched, unsure but trusting her instinct. How do we respond? Lyriash lowered her hand. By standing. Storms know when something stands with purpose. Ethan felt a small smile touch his lips, even in the cold. Humans are good at standing in storms. She looked at him with a warmth that made the air feel less bitter. That is why I came to you. They approached the point where the valley dipped slightly, the snow smoothing into a flat sheet of white that reflected the glow in rippling patterns. The strange light brightened. A soft, harmonic wave moved through the wind, brushing against Ethan's jacket like a gentle vibration. The scanner beeped once, a low warning tone. Lyriash lifted her chin, her eyes narrowing. It senses our presence. Does it understand it? Ethan asked. No, she said quietly. But it tries. She took one step forward. The glow beneath her skin rose, brightening the air around them. The storm softened for a moment, as if pausing to listen. Ethan watched her, feeling something shift around them, something that made the night feel less vast. Lyriash, he said softly, be careful. She turned her head slightly, the faintest smile playing along her features. I'm not afraid. Your storm taught me something tonight. The wind pressed against them, not harsh, but deliberate. The glow ahead pulsed once more. Then, for the first time, it changed rhythm, adjusting to the pattern of Lyriish's glow. Ethan felt the breath catch in his throat. It is responding to you. No, she said softly. It is responding to us. Her glow stabilized into a soft, steady wave. The storm quieted around them, holding its breath. And in that suspended moment, the valley felt awake, waiting for whatever came next. The valley held its breath as the strange glow shifted rhythm, its pulses settling into a calm, deliberate pattern that rolled across the snow like slow ripples on still water. Ethan felt the vibration soften against his chest, no longer a warning, but something closer to acknowledgement. The wind eased further, brushing gently against his jacket in a steady, thoughtful motion. Lyriish stood at the very edge of the flat expanse, her glow rising and falling in perfect harmony with the quiet waves of light ahead. For a moment, she seemed almost weightless, as if her body understood the storm in a way no human ever could. Ethan watched her shoulders settle into a stillness that radiated calm. It is listening, she whispered, her voice barely lifting above the hush of the wind. Ethan stepped beside her, feeling the cold graze the exposed edge of his glove. And does it understand you? Lyriish exhaled softly, her breath thin and warm against the air. Not the way your people understand each other. But storms do not speak in words. They speak in presence. A new pulse rolled out from the glow, a soft, pale wave that drifted across the valley floor. It shifted the falling snow ever so slightly, pushing the flakes outward in a delicate ring. Ethan's breath caught at the sight, not from fear, but from the surreal beauty of it. Lyriish lifted one hand, her palm open, and let her glow flare in a slow, measured motion. The light ahead responded instantly. Its pattern shifted, adjusting to match hers. Then the wind moved again, brushing around them gently like a warm tide rolling past their legs. The storm no longer pressed against them. It circled them. Ethan sensed the meaning in the movement, even if he could not explain it. It is not trying to harm anything, he said quietly. It is just searching. Lyriish nodded. It is drawn to the strongest rhythm. Tonight, that rhythm was your tower. Ethan looked toward the blinking signal in the distance. The tower stood steady now, its pale blue glow unwavering against the dark. So it is not a threat. Not unless we react with fear. Lyriish lowered her hand. The glow beneath her skin softened again, settling into a peaceful hum. The storm responded by thinning into a gentle drift of snowflakes that fell with almost delicate slowness. The strange light pulsed once more, brighter than before, and then its rhythm began to scatter. The pulses faded into the snowfall, dissolving like ink spreading through water until no trace of the glow remained. Ethan felt the valley exhale. The wind dropped to a whisper. The snow settled into a soft, quiet blanket. Lyriish watched the last shimmer fade, her expression thoughtful and calm. It has found its answer, she murmured. And the storm will rest for now. Ethan looked at her, the silver light of her eyes reflecting the now clear sky above them. You stopped it, he said softly. No, she replied, turning toward him. We stood together. That is what storms understand. She stepped closer, her glow warming the cold air between them. For a moment, the valley fell completely silent, the kind of silence that carried meaning, the kind that arrived only after something profound had passed. Ethan felt the weight of the night lift, replaced by a steady warmth that came not from the air, but from the presence beside him. Lyriish held his gaze, the faint glow in her eyes reflecting the stars now appearing through the thinning clouds. Your people stand, she said gently. Mine listen. Tonight, both were needed. Ethan let the truth of that settle deep inside him, quiet and sure. The relay tower blinked in the distance, steady and bright. The storm eased into a soft whisper around them. And in that fragile calm, Lyriish's voice lowered to a tender echo. The night remembers those who face it with courage. The stars above reflected in her eyes, and for the first time, they looked almost human.